All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Masterful Conversations podcast, where we hear about and learn about leadership from the men who have served or are currently serving as Worshipful Master in a regular lodge of free and accepted Masons. I am Brother Matthew Wagstaff, a proud past master of Eureka Lodge number 36 out of Rochester, New York. We're currently serving as my Worshipful Master is Brother Jermaine Myers. And I'm with
I am Past Master Mark Alexander of Sons of Kings Lodge number 123. We're currently Brother Fitzgerald Boyce II serves as Worship Master.
We both hail from the most worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of the state of New York. We're currently serving as our Grand Master is Most Worshipful, Darren M. Morton. And today we have an esteemed guest to talk about his leadership journey, Past Master Vincent Jackson. But before we get into the introduction of Past Master Jackson, we have a quick disclaimer.
The views and opinions of this show are our own. It is not the views and opinions of our lodges, Grand Lodges. The intent of this show is for educational and entertainment purposes only. If you have any questions, please see the proper offices in your respective jurisdictions.
Absolutely. Also, we appreciate the love and support for everyone that's a viewer and listener of the show. Please like, subscribe, share, do all the things on YouTube that you do in order to get the word out about what we're doing here on the podcast. So we appreciate all the love, all the comments. Everything's going really well, and we appreciate the love. So with that,
Wait. I would say if you want to write longer, you could send us an email, masterfulconversations@gmail.com.
yes, feel free to send an email too. All positive energy in the emails, please. Masterfulconversations@gmail.com for sure. For sure. All right. So with that, we have Past Master Vincent Jackson here with us today. Past Master Jackson is the master or past master of Progressive Lodge number 64 out of Mount Vernon, New York, or the most worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge, the state of New York. Past Master Jackson served as Worshipful Master 3 times, first in 2011, then again in 2018 and 2019. He also served as District Deputy Grand Lecturer and earned the Emeritus status. And then most recently has been appointed the Grand Lecturer of the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of the state of New York. And also, Past Master Jackson received the 33rd and last degree of the Ancient and Accepted Scottish Rite. So with that, welcome, Past Master Jackson, to the Masterful Conversations podcast.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm pleased to be here.
Absolutely. And so we're pleased to hear about your story, your journey to the East, and the leadership nuggets that you learned along the way. And so with that, this podcast is all about leadership. So before we get into those nuggets, can you just give us a little bit of background about when you were raised in Masonry and your journey to the East?
When I was raised in 1995, and the funny thing about really before that, my interest in Masonry, I always had some kind of an interest because my grandfather was a Mason on my mother's side, my mother's father. And every Father's Day, he would invite my father and a couple of me and one of my brothers, but my father would take to his church where they had a Father's Day breakfast for Masons. And the chapter would cook. And I always saw all of the sisters wearing the white. And it was in the basement of one of the churches down in Harlem. And one day I got to find out what lodge he belonged to, but I still don't know. And ultimately, when my father passed away in 1994, my mother gave me her father's Masonic ring. And I looked at it and I was like in awe that she would give me this. And I have a brother who was the only Mason in the family other than my mother's father. And when he saw her give me the ring, he didn't get upset. He came and he put his arm around me and he whispered to me, he says, now you've got to become a Mason. And the love that he kind of expressed in that, rather than telling me, oh, you should give me that, you're not a Mason, made me think that I need to look even more into it. And so that precipitated me becoming a Mason.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So when you were interested in Masonry, obviously you got the petition, you went through the process to become a Master Mason. When in that journey did you see leadership as something that you aspired to be within the craft? And how did you prepare yourself for leadership?
Well, first, I saw people like William Doc Garrett, who was a district deputy grand lecturer emeritus, and past master Deacon Shaw, Charlie Shaw, but we call him Deacon Shaw. He performed the funeral, and Doc Garrett, not performed, excuse me, he exemplified the funeral, and Doc Garrett exemplified the middle chamber. And I saw both of them do that, and my jaw would hit the floor, and I was in awe of what they were able to do from memory. And I used to sit in the south side of the lodge, and all of the past masters sat on the north side. And I would sit there and I would look around and say, am I ever going to be over there? Or am I ever going to be the master of this lodge? And I said, I don't think I have what it takes. And so in listening to what was going on, eventually I said, there were columns there, and if you've ever been to Progressive, there are some columns there holding up the floor, the ceiling. And so I said, I'm going to end up being one of those columns. You're there, you're supportive, you're helping to make sure that things happen, and you're essential. And I had kind of regulated myself that that's what I was going to be in the lodge. And then something happened. I had some family issues, and I was away from the lodge for like 5 years. And then when I came back, a lot of things were different. A lot of people were different. A lot of the brothers many of the brothers I had never seen before. And so I took a seat on the floor, and I just sat where there was an empty seat. And I looked around, and I noticed brothers struggling with their ritualistic work. And I said to myself, this is not good. I said, I've got to get more involved, because we're not supposed to be doing work like this. And let me jump back for a minute. When I got raised, the next class that came after me, I did the gloves and apron for that class. And I did it because I was so inspired by the person who had done the gloves and aprons for me the year before when I came in. So when I came back and saw that, I just felt a drive to become more involved and to try to help my lodge become more aware of what the ritual was saying and doing, and asking of them. And so I just started to get involved. And the more I got involved, the more I started to see that I was being called further,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And ultimately, I'm sitting as the junior warden, and I'm sitting there and I'm helping the senior warden do his work. I'm helping the worshipful master get things done that he wanted to get done. And then the senior warden says, I don't want to be the worshipful master. I want to go down to the floor. So I said, well, if he's not going, I'm going. And that's how I ended up first time in 2011 becoming a Worshipful Master.
Got you. So you went from junior warden to Worshipful Master in that progression that way. Okay.
And I don't support that idea, but I just felt that after I came back 5 years later, I made that decision. And it was based on what I saw as the need in the lodge. And I didn't want the momentum that I saw building up to go. And that's why I did that.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think it's uncommon. I mean, it's certainly not uncommon. I don't think me or Mark sat in both warden seats. I think, or did you sit in both?
No,
Right.
no,
So
I didn't do junior. I only did senior.
yeah, me too. So yeah, it's not uncommon. I think we've heard from other past masters as well that either served as junior or senior. But it's based on the need of the lodge at that time and what's best for the organization, what's best for the lodge at that time. I'm curious about when you were junior warden, were there things that you had in mind that you need to work on in terms of your leadership that will prepare you for either the senior warden or the worshipful masters place in the lodge, station in the lodge? So like if there's a warden that's listening right now, or if there is a brother that's in the quarry right now that's listening that has aspirations of being a master, were there things that you were doing as a master or even as a deacon or master of ceremonies that you were kind of thinking in your mind to say, okay, I need to be sharp in these areas in order to be a good leader as I progress?
When I was a senior master of ceremony, in my mind was to be the best senior master of ceremony. I wanted everyone who came into the lodge, every candidate who alarmed that door, to really remember that experience. And so I wanted to exemplify that the best that it could possibly be done.
Mm-hmm.
And I carried that in every seat that I sat in.
Got you. So you're doing the job the best that you can with where you are. And so
And with what you have.
what you have.
Yeah, let me jump in and ask a question. I know when you had on purpose basically made a distinction between perform and exemplify. I guess there's a difference to you?
There is absolutely a difference.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a performance is a show. You know, it's a performance. You get up and you put on a show, a song and dance or whatever. But to exemplify means that you have to take whatever it is, bring it inside yourself, and to bring it out and exemplify it through your actions, whether it's what you say or what you do. You know, you could exemplify the working tools by your behavior. You know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes 100% sense. As much past master Damon Wright from my lodge says, embody it, then body it. So you embody the words and then you body the actual ritual.
Exactly. It's not going to mean anything to the person hearing it if you're standing up there like you're on a Broadway stage. You have to be able to say it because you understand the meaning of what you're saying.
Yeah,
very much so.
that reminds me. You talked about the funeral and embodying the funeral, and you know, the funeral is one of those first impressions that we get about masonry before we become masons. And even as I was going through my journey as through the initiatory degrees, just hearing that funeral be embodied by the men, it just, you know, it leaves an impression that lasts with you for your entire life through the craft. When that funeral is done well and it's done with like just the precision and the emphasis on the words and just the timing and the pause and just knowing, yeah. Absolutely. I think exemplify is a great way to sort of characterize how you're supposed to, you know, display it.
Everything in there. You're supposed to inculcate the ritual by exemplifying it. You know, Deacon Shaw, or past master Charlie Shaw, would do the funeral, and I would stand behind him, and I was maybe a steward or something, and I would have the senior or the junior warden's part written on a piece of paper so that I could do it because they weren't there for whatever reason. And I would listen to him exemplify his funeral, and although my mouth was mostly closed, it was really hanging on the floor, and I just was in awe of what I was hearing him be able to do. And then many years later, when I learned the funeral, even now, when I exemplify it, I hear his words in my head. I could see his face standing there as I'm doing it, you know?
Yeah.
And I felt no greater honor than to be able to exemplify the funeral for him when he passed.
That's great. That's another thing. We love to say the names of the men who had an influence on our leadership and on us as Masons, for sure. So thank you for sharing brother's name. Going back to your time in the East, can you talk a little bit about the things you focused on as Worshipful Master? Also talk about the size of the lodge, just to give brothers some context, like how many brothers were on the rolls approximately, who was the Grand Master at that time, and then what are the things you focused on?
All right. Well, the first time the Grand Master was Greg Smith Sr. And there was about 89 brothers in the lodge. And I think I had all of the seats filled that first time. I had all of the seats filled that first time because at that time, it being my first time in the East, I believed that that was essentially necessary, that you have somebody in all those seats. My second time, I'll go back to that if you want to, but my second time, I realized that each of those seats carries with it an obligation. And if the person who is going to sit in that seat is not willing to accept the obligation that goes along with that seat, it's better to have that seat empty. And let somebody aspire to fill that empty seat rather than put somebody who is just a warm body in place.
Interesting perspective, for sure. Okay. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So did you have any sort of things that you wanted to accomplish that first year in the East, being brand new?
I wanted, the first thing I wanted to do, there was a little, as there is most times, although there was drama leading up to the election, I felt blessed that I was elected by the casting of a unanimous vote. And so my first communication that I sent out was to let the brothers know that I know that for many of them, I was not their first choice as Worshipful Master. But as Worshipful Master, I promised to be my best at being a Worshipful Master for all. And I asked my secretary at the time to give me a call list of every brother in the lodge. And as a matter of fact, my secretary at the time was our current Grand Master. And he gave me a phone list of everybody. And I went to work. When I was at work, on my lunch break, I would go into one of the courtrooms and I would get on the phone and I would just start calling every member in the lodge on the phone list and let them know who I was and to ask them about how they were and how they were feeling and encourage them to come to a meeting. And I did that until I spoke to everybody in the lodge. And I did that in the hopes of, increasing the amount of people who were going to come out. And it really didn't show itself as much as I had hoped, but it did connect me to people in the lodge that I never even knew existed, you know? And so
Yeah,
for me, it
that
was a very rewarding experience.
yeah, definitely that'll happen all the time. And brothers just get on the call on phone and call brothers. I know I had that experience. Basically, my whole Masonic career going back to when I was on the other side and stuff. But when I was secretary, I started that, and I remember I had just relationships with brothers. Then I finally meet them, and it's like, like long lost friends. But
Right.
I definitely recommend that to at least brothers do that before when they become junior warden, if not before that, to make sure they get those connections. So they come up to it. Anything will make your life easier as master. I mean, you should do it just as brothers. My first time I would recommend that it when a brother first get raised. When you first get raised to Master Mason, he should call everybody in the lodge, introduce himself as a new member and things like that. And then they continue on from that point. Once a year, if everybody call your brothers once a year, that'll be a beautiful thing, and we'll be much more tighter than we are.
That's true. And that whole thing, like you even mentioned it, about
Mm-hmm.
the junior warden, his responsibility is
Mm-hmm.
to know what makes everybody tick in the lodge, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's supposed to be that guy that calls you from labor to refreshment. So he should know what it is that you like to drink. He should know what it is, what kind of foods you like. He should know how your personality is, what's going on with you at your house. If you have any issues, he should be that guy that tries to talk to you and give you counsel about whatever, you know, because that's his responsibility. The junior wardens should have should take a greater responsibility on what is happening in their lodge. Many lodges have this problem now with a gap between the younger members and the older members. The junior warden should be working to try to close that gap. You know, it's
Very much so. I would say also, I know Right Worshipful Booker, the past grand lecturer, when he was going around, that's one thing he stressed, and I never forgot. He said that the junior warden is the heart of the lodge, you know? So it goes along to what you're saying. He's keeping everybody together and things like that. He's showing the love, you know?
right.
So if he could do that, it'll help out the lodge, tremendously. And just to go
Right.
along with what you're saying also, like you said, the counselor and stuff, also the chaplain, because sometimes we don't think the chaplain is just the person sit there and do prayers, but he's supposed to be sort of like the spiritual counselor for the lodge. So if we had
Point to
those
heaven and
two
lead the way.
people, yeah, exactly. We had those people doing their job more properly, more fully, more lodges would get along much better. I believe
That's
so
true.
anyway.
That is true. I sat as a chaplain, I think, for 1 or 2 years myself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But
Definitely.
that's
But
true.
that's
And as the junior warden, I was also the the canteen president and the president of the Craftsman's Club, as the junior warden, and that put
mm-hmm.
me in a perfect position to say, okay, the canteen is open. I'd call people up, I'd put out flyers, I'd do phone calls, and just to get people to constantly come together.
Mm-hmm.
I got in a lot of trouble because I would be there with the canteen open at 4 o'clock in the morning. My wife was like, it's time to go home. She would come with me. She would be there with me.
Oh, okay.
You know,
Mm. The sacrifice. But
yeah,
that's also showing leadership from the other positions too, because leadership isn't always from the east. Any officer is definitely a leader in their lodge. But every brother's supposed to be a leader, every master masons. But particularly the officers, everybody do their own job. That's them showing leadership.
Yeah.
right.
Just real quick.
In fact, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Pastor.
I was going to say that the primary leadership quality is a willingness to sacrifice.
Mm.
You have to be willing to sacrifice your time. You have to be willing to sacrifice, opportunities. You have to be willing to sacrifice money. You have to, your ego, you got to get rid of that You know, you got to sacrifice your pride. You don't need that. You know, you need humility if you want to really be a leader.
Absolutely. I wanted to just take a moment just to shout out Worshipful Master Claude Do on the beautiful work that you all are doing in Progressive 64 and in the building.
Definitely.
That building is beautiful. Like the additions that me and when I was Worshipful Master, me and the current Worshipful Master for my lodge, we had the privilege of being invited out to, I believe you had a cookout at Progressive when we were there. I think it was last year or the year before. But to see that addition and the canteen that you have upstairs is beautiful right now. I mean, it's a beautiful space to be in. So shout out to everybody at Progressive. Worshipful Master Claude, you know you're doing a fantastic job. And so shout out to Progressive.
I am proud of my worshipful master, Claude Ado. He has come a long way, you know, and he has learned a lot, and he has learned how to spread light and impart knowledge to his brothers, and that is one of the first things in the charge to the worshipful master, you know.
Mm-hmm. That's our classmate.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Yeah, I'll tell you something funny. I raised Claude in 2011.
Oh, nice.
Nice, nice.
Brother Jackson, Past Master Jackson, one of the questions we always ask is, what do you think is what you consider effective leadership?
Well, like I said, effective leadership is a willingness to sacrifice. You know, you have to be willing to put in the work to get it done. Many times I see brothers, they aspire to go to the East because they see that worshipful master in the East and they see people gravitate to him and they see people defer to him and they see people, you know, come out to functions that he does and they're like, I want to be that guy. And so they do whatever they can do to get into that seat, but then they don't do anything that they need to do to make that seat successful because those are not any of the things they were looking at. They weren't looking at the phone calls that he was making. They weren't paying attention to all of the lodges that he was traveling to the breakfasts that he was going to, you know, to the hands that he was shaking, you know,
Mm-hmm.
to the in the charge to the worshipful master, it said the as it is the purpose of Freemasonry to create
Friendships.
Create it, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't look to those things. And then they wonder why they had such a terrible year, you know?
Yeah.
And then they
That's
disappeared. And then they
that's
disappear
definitely
and they never come back.
come back. Yeah, they once they have their hard year. Being master, I would say one of the things that brothers don't look at in being master really just the experience of it, because the experience of itself is supposed to help make you better. Some other things are supposed to make you better as a man. So just going through that experience, you know, that's the thing that I think brothers need to stress more anyway. Even when you're online, it's just the experience of going through these amount of years with the particular brothers at a particular time that you will never have again. So you're supposed to enjoy that ride and grow from that ride in order to be a better man.
That's also why it's important to try to ride as many of those stations and places as you can.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because it's what you just said, the ability to end up at this point and to look back at this point and to say, I am a better man because of this.
Mm-hmm.
And I can look at myself and I can honestly say, looking at myself in the mirror, I'm a better man now. I don't do that. I don't follow that. I don't act like that. I don't need that. I don't require that. That doesn't mean that to me anymore because I get it.
Yeah.
You know?
It's definitely about the destination and the process. And
This
so
is the process.
in what you become through that process, versus like the end destination. So becoming the worshipful master, becoming the right worshipful, becoming the grand master is really that process and that journey and all the things you had to overcome and you had to improve in order to get there, that really make it worthwhile at the end of the day. And going back to your point too about they brothers will see the worshipful master and say, I want to be that guy. Um, there's a statement that I hear from like a John Maxwell, some of the leadership guys. They say, hey, if you want to be that guy, are you willing to do what I did in order to be that guy? And so they don't see
Right,
what
right.
what you did in order to be that. So unless you're willing to do what I did, you probably may not work for you to be if you want to become that guy. So it's important to understand that.
I thought
Absolutely.
you was going.
I made a point earlier when I was talking about the charge to the worshipful master before we came on,
Mhm.
and I said that many of the worshipful masters, actually all the worship masters, and all of the senior wardens, and all of the junior wardens, or really any brother who aspires to be worshipful master, should sit and 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 study that charge to the worshipful master. And I say study it because not reading it through and say, oh yeah, I read that. That was a nice piece of work. No, you should look at it line by line or thought by thought and absorb it and digest it and understand what it is that oriental chair of King Solomon wants from you. And more than that, when you come out of that chair, there's nothing in there that says that it doesn't stay an obligation devolved upon you.
Mm.
You know, once you come out of the chair as a worshipful master and you're a past master, you know the obligation that devolves upon him. You know that the honor, the reputation, and the usefulness of a lodge depends upon the skill and ability with which he manages its concerns. You know this is the fact for that worshipful master. So how are you assisting him?
Mm-hmm.
How are you helping him with the honor of your lodge? You know, with the respectability of your lodge, with the usefulness of your lodge. You know, your
Yeah.
worshipful master needs somebody who can do the funeral in your lodge. You're a past master. You're sitting there with your feet up at home watching football. Why are you there?
Yeah, that's a great segue to the next question that we have about now that you are a past master and you were past master a couple of times. Can you talk to us about how you showed up or how you show up currently as a past master of your lodge and how you support the current master or previous masters that came after you as a past master?
Well, I'm a brother in the lodge, right? Yes, I'm a past master, but I'm a brother. And I'm there as every brother in the lodge should be to support the worshipful master. And and as a past master, the master should be able to know that he can turn to me or call me or reach out to me for any kind of guidance on any kind of subject that he may need. I remember once I was in the lodge and there was a lot of back and forth going on with people, and it was getting a little chaotic. People were standing up, so I just stood up. I put the sign of fidelity, and I just stood there, and I waited. Then I waited, and I waited, and then I realized the worship master was just looking at me, and uh, and I looked at him, and he's just looking at me. And so I like motioned my hand to him, and he goes, "Oh, the chair recognizes past Master Jackson." And I said, "Well, thank you, Worshipful Master." I said, "Brothers, just a teachable moment. all of this is not supposed to be going on. If you want to address the worshipful master, you're supposed to stand up. You're supposed to go to the sign of fidelity and be quiet and wait for the master to recognize you. You're not supposed to be doing any of this stuff. And that's an example of what I mean of how, as a past master, you should support and be of assistance to your worshipful master.
Yeah, and exemplifying. Another example of exemplifying.
Exactly.
Exactly. 100%. I know one thing you did also mention along a little earlier, and we talked about in the green room, was about the time. So how did you balance your time with with your family and things like that when you was worshipful master?
Um, well, a lot of things I took my wife to. I told her she had to come. Look, I said, I need you there. But I'll tell you something else. And you just brought it back to my mind. That first year, in order to promote the fall dance, I had made a million phone calls, and I was trying to find ways to be accessible for brothers to purchase their tickets. So I started going to the lodge, and I would open up the lodge, and I would put a table in the middle of the social hall and a box with money in it and a box wrapped with a bunch of tickets. And I said, I will be here from 6 o'clock till 10 o'clock at night, and anybody can come in and purchase their tickets. So no one would have an excuse. And I did that. And I did it by myself. My wardens were not available, but I was there. And that was a very successful fall dance. It was very successful. But I did a journal, and my wardens, again, they weren't really there. So I went around getting ads and calling up people and getting people to do. And my wife, well, we honored all of the life members of the lodge that year. And so I got pictures and bios, and that was from all of those phone calls I made. And their families were coming, and I had made up a journal. I had it done pretty much myself, and it had a spiral binder. And they made a mistake, and they missed one of the life members. So my wife and I sat on the floor in my house, and we unraveled all of those binders, put the pages in where they belonged, and rewrapped all of them. And
Wow.
we didn't finish until daybreak the morning of the full dance. And I said in my stewardship that my wife was one of the best masons I've ever worked with.
Nice.
Very supportive.
Yeah, you definitely need that if you're going to be in the East, because it'll be hard if you got a chaotic home and then your wife don't support you. You trying to do things to the lodge, and I don't think it's going to work. That's
Right.
for the
And
most of the reason why, like even them coming in as to be a Mason, if your wife says no, then it's going to be a no for us.
right, right. And she's not an Eastern Star, nor does she want to be an Eastern Star. She was my wife, you know?
Yep. Yeah, just like mine.
Yeah.
So you gonna talk about the mentorship, Mark?
Mentor. Oh, yeah. So I know you did mention a couple of brothers that mentored you during your time in Freemasonry and in the East. Do you have any other brothers that imparted some knowledge onto you and made your journey a little bit smoother and better?
Well, not always smoother, but always knowledgeable. You know,
Okay.
I would have to acknowledge a past master, Leonard LaRue, as
LaRue.
one of those who was always full and is always full of knowledge, and he's ready to give it, you know, on his terms. You know,
Yeah, salute.
yeah. And I love the brother, but
Hmm.
it has always been an iron sharpening iron kind of relationship. And I love it. I
Hmm.
absolutely love it.
Hmm.
You know, um, past master Kirby Mack is is he came in the year after me. Like I said about the gloves and apron, they exemplified the gloves and apron for me when I came in, and I was like, wow, that's amazing. So Doc Garrett, a past master, Doc Garrett said, you want to work on something? And I said, yeah, I want to learn that gloves and apron. So he said, well, you can come to my house every Wednesday at 6:30 and I'll work with you. And so I did that. And so the next year, when past master Kirby Mack now came in, I
Hmm.
exemplified the gloves and aprons for him. And when he saw it, he said, I'm learning that. And he did it for the class that came after him.
Nice.
you know,
Nice.
but he is truly to me, um, what is to say that the tenets of Freemasonry are friendship, morality, and brotherly love. He exemplifies friendship, Masonic, true to the marrow of your bone friendship, you know?
Hmm. That's always a good thing. I also don't want to mention, because we talked about the gloves and apron a couple of times, and I know a lot of lodges, or a few lodges, have the tradition of past masters doing that. So sometimes brothers in their head think that only past masters can do that. But in the reality, of course, all that work that we tend to give that way is all the worship master's job. So all of them could do it. Except for, even the middle chamber, that's the senior deacon's job role that he's
Right,
supposed to be doing it. So,
right.
the anybody could do any of those different lectures, depending on what. There's no
I,
particular person to do those
I,
things.
I would also encourage,
Hmm.
I would encourage worshipful masters to look at the brothers in their lodge, especially the new brothers in there, and 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 pick brothers and kind of push them into the direction of
Hmm.
learning the third section of the first degree,
Mm,
of
mm-hmm.
learning the gloves and apron,
Hmm.
of learning the middle chamber, of
Hmm.
learning the historical lecture.
Historical in the third.
Yeah,
The longer
because
parts.
yeah, the long because the charges,
Hmm.
the charges, because you learn, you inculcate when
Hmm.
you learn those parts,
Mm,
and
Hmm.
and and um and they can't help but become full. In the charge, it says the mysteries of the order must be unfolded, and that's exactly how you have to unfold it for the brother. And as they take it in and it unfolds, it says also you must expand their mind and inform them. You know,
yeah.
and the
Now,
masters need to look for ways to make that happen.
absolutely. And so now I'm curious as your growth and how you evolved from 2011 to 2018 and 2019, and also
Hmm.
now as the grand lecturer for all of us district deputy grand lecturers out here and trying to, now you got all of us that you got to sort of corral and keep us in line as well. How is your
Well,
leadership?
I'll tell you.
How's your
I'll
leadership
tell you.
evolved over time?
In 2018, I was a lecturer,
Hmm.
but remember I said that leadership is about sacrifice. I never thought that I would ever be able to become a district deputy grand lecturer. And when I did, I was so amazed that I had gotten to that point that I was loving it. But my lodge needed leadership. They needed somebody who is willing to go back as the Worshipful Master to help stabilize the lodge and strengthen it. And so I took that collar off, put that purple and gold down so that I could put that square back on my chest and be a leader for my lodge, because that's what was needed. I sacrificed that. That was something that I had aspired to, you know, but it wasn't worth the loss that my lodge would suffer if I said, "Oh, see ya, I'm going over to the Grand Lodge."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Did you, I know your first year you talked about the relationships and calling the brothers, and it seems like that was a heavy emphasis in 2011. Did you have a different focus in 2018, 2019? I know you talked about stabilization and those sort of things, but did your leadership style change at all in 2018, 2019? And did you have a different type of focus as a leader of the lodge?
Yeah, in 2018 and 2019, my focus was on being an example and trying to teach brothers what being a Mason meant.
Tell me more. What does that mean to you?
To work, you know, to be present, to be willing to be willing to sacrifice, to be willing to put work in to accomplish a common goal for the benefit of the lodge. There was a trouble, and we needed to raise money. And so I had to summon the lodge and send out a summons and brought everybody together. And then I talked about progressive. You know, the first Worshipful Master of Progressive Lodge, he got a charter in 1922, and he chose in 1922, back when we were still being lynched and murdered, and soon after the Tulsa, Oklahoma race riot. And he started a lodge and called it Progressive. And I said that we, as brothers, look to that man who all the way back then had the vision to call a lodge progressive. And we have to come together and we have to do what needs to be done to support this institution of ours. And then it was like a little voice said to me, well, you said it, you better start it. So I had to go into my pocket and put some money down on the table that would make the point that I was serious about what I was saying. And when I went home, I said to myself, my wife is going to kill me. But when I walked into the house, my wife said to me, well, how much is it going to cost us? And I told her, she said, well, it's for a good thing.
God bless her, for sure.
That's what I say. That's what I say till this day.
Yeah.
Very much so. I don't have any questions left. You got any more, Matt?
Yeah, just the last one I would say is that we always ask is, I know you're a grand lecturer now, and I'm sure you'll be in this space for the foreseeable future. But hypothetically,
Wait, before you ask that question, I had one last thing I had to add.
Okay.
Because you asked me about people that were influential to me.
Okay.
Yep.
And I told you about friendship and past Master Kirby Mack. And to me, the illustrious Deputy of the Orient, Herman Simpson, represented morality to me. He is a brother that you could call him and you can tell him about anything. And the first thing he's going to do, he's going to pray with you about it right then. And he's sincere and he's honest and he is so uplifting. And the last, brotherly love, to me is most deeply represented by our current most worshipful Grand Master, who expressed to me a level of brotherly love that is unparalleled. And so when I think in my mind of the extended compass and its reference to friendship, morality, and brotherly love being the principal tenets of Freemasonry, I see those three faces every time.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you for lifting them up, for sure. So in the hypothetical scenario here, thinking about what you know about leadership and your experiences and how you've exemplified leadership over your time in Masonry and in life. If you were to go back into the chair as Worshipful Master of Progressive Lodge number 64 in the year 2025, next year, what would you focus on as a leader of the lodge next year?
Stability. I would focus on making making sure that the brothers who were in the lodge understood what was expected of them in the various stations and places that they held, and why there is a standard that must be followed no matter what in order to preserve the purity of the order and to maintain unimpaired its rites and ceremonies.
And how do you think, what's one way you would kind of make that happen? So that's an idea and a thought and a concept. Like, what's one way that you think you can bring that to life for brothers to actually resonate with them? Just for brothers that are listening right now, they kind of want something practical that'll help them in that leadership.
Live it. You have to be willing. You have to be willing to make the demands and challenges upon yourself that people look at and say, "Oh, that's what you mean by showing up. Oh, that's what you mean by making sure these things are done properly. Oh, that's what you mean by helping this brother through this, and not condemning him,
Yes,
we are so quick to judge, and so slow to really get down on our knees and help. That's one of those things that need to be done, and we need to also be willing to call a spade a spade. It says the unruly brother must be reduced to order.
Very much so. Past Master Jackson, it's definitely been a pleasure to have you on a guest this evening. I know we personally met coming through the consistory line together. And I know you stressed a few times about being an example, and I could say, just even seeing you back then, because I don't know what was going on with you particularly, but I know at that time that's when you had the oxygen tank and everything like that. So you definitely was an example for brothers that was, here's a brother that got something up with him and he's still here. And he's still coming out and he's still handling his business and doing what he had to do. So that's always a good example for brothers to follow. We want to thank you for the jewels you have given to us. Things that that we should definitely, it was very much important. We have to understand the ritual that we are reciting and that we are saying, and that's how you get the chance to exemplify it. Primary leadership qualities is a willingness to sacrifice, because you're gonna have to sacrifice as a leader, and your family gonna have to sacrifice with you at the same time that you show from your wife. And being humble helps, so always try to be humble, and the willingness to put in the work. That's something that we definitely need to do, even though if it's not asked of you to put in the work, you should ask of yourself to make sure you put in the work. And whatever title or whatever it is that you have, live up to that title. Like we were saying, like you always stress, exemplify it. So if you a GIG, be a GIG. Know the work so
Exactly.
you can expect it. You want to be
Exactly.
worshipful master? Worshipful master, master means teacher. So you should be able to teach.
One quick thing, one last
Yes,
thing.
yes.
Someone mentioned to me regarding the Worshipful Master's station.
Hmm.
He said that he had been told by a past master, how can you hope to be the master of anything if you're not worshipful?
That too. See, that's both parts. You got to be worshipful, full of worship, and respectful, honorable, and you got to be able to teach all that, and all that coming about being humble and all the rest of that stuff. So, like you said, and like we were saying, and stop looking at the top of the iceberg, go under the water and see all them things that you don't see that
That
actually makes the
support you to be
iceberg
there.
stay up. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Well, if it wasn't for that foundation, the iceberg wouldn't be there. So let's continue to do that. And thanks again, Pastor Master Jackson.
This was really my pleasure. And I want to thank you, brothers, for inviting me on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, I want to also express my thanks and gratitude to you, Pastor Master Jackson, for your time and energy this evening. Definitely learned some more things about you, and I'm looking forward to learning more in the future as we work together. So much appreciation to you as well. So here we are with another episode of the Masterful Conversations podcast in the books here. For those who are listening right now, please, again, like, subscribe, follow the channel, share this with anybody who you come in contact with that's in the craft or not in the craft that may benefit from some of the lessons that were shared on this show. As we always say on this show, the world needs leaders, and leadership starts with being able to lead ourselves and developing ourselves. It's impossible for you to lead other people if you cannot lead yourself. So please take the lessons from this podcast, from this show, and apply them in your life so that you can improve yourself, support your family, as well as your community. And with that, we bid you adieu and have a fantastic evening. God bless you all.